Hi guys, thanks for joining me again for some yoga today. I hope you are having a good day thus far, and it'll get even better after this. So today we're going to work on our psoas muscle. The psoas muscle is a really big hip stabilizer muscle, hip flexor as well. It runs from our lower back where it's connected to the spine, and it comes around through the front of the pelvis and attaches to the inner thigh muscles, the inner thigh bone. So this muscle not only gets physically tight just from all the sitting, standing, running, walking that we do, but it also just holds on to a lot of emotional tension and tightness. So we're going to do a little combination of engaging that muscle, stretching it, and then ending with a psoas release exercise. So when you feel ready, we're going to go ahead and begin on our backs. So if you want to make your way down to the floor, make sure you have some space around you. And I apologize for the stuffiness of my voice. I'm batting a little cold over here, so sorry for the sound of that. All right, so once you make your way onto the floor, feel free to have your feet on the floor and the knees pointing up. And the feet about hip width apart, or maybe even a little bit wider than those hips. Hands can just rest on the floor or on the belly. Just give yourself a few moments here to adjust to make yourself feel, help yourself to feel a little more comfortable. And the knees can rest alongside one another, or they can just hang out. And we're going to take these first few moments, like always, just to try to draw that awareness away from what's going on around us, maybe our to-do list, whatever is going on today, and try to draw that awareness inward, into the body, just for these next 30 minutes or so for our practice. Just beginning to notice any sensation you might feel in the body. And maybe as we're on the back here, you might be able to feel the lower back or the back of the shoulders connected to the floor beneath you. Trying to draw that awareness to your breath as well. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to find or to feel that breath when we're laying down. And you might even bring both hands over the belly, or maybe one hand over the belly and the other hand over the heart. Just beginning to find a little bit of a deeper breath here, a little bit of a deeper, fuller inhale. You might feel the belly start to rise as you do so. And then a little bit of a longer exhale. As the belly comes back down, the diaphragm contracts, and the air goes out of those lungs. Let's take about 5 full breaths here, trying to send that breath deep into the belly. Almost like you had a balloon inside the belly and you were filling up that balloon with your air, with your breath. So as you breathe in, we fill the balloon so that belly gets bigger. And as we breathe out, the air goes out of the balloon as the belly gets smaller. And then just coming back to that natural breath. And as we stay right here for a few more moments, this is already a nice little psoas release. With using the support of the feet and the lower back on the floor, the psoas doesn't have to stretch or engage or anything, and it can just rest. So if you're ever feeling that lower back pain, this is always an option to come here. But we're gonna start to bring a little movement into those hips. So go ahead and walk those feet out a little bit wider than those hips if they're not already. And then we're just gonna bring both knees over to one side and then slowly up and over to the other side. Rolling across the bottom of the feet to the edges of the feet. Gently moving that lower back and even maybe the sides of the hips across the floor. Just a few times side to side here. Windshield wiping those knees. And then after you even out those sides, go ahead and bring those knees back to center. We'll walk the feet back in. And we're gonna lift the feet off the floor. So coming into like a reverse tabletop. So keeping a little bend in those knees. Let's try to bring those knees right above those hips. Oftentimes they like to come in just because that's easier. So try to keep them right above the hips here. And as you do so, paying attention to that belly and to their lower back. Try to keep the lower back pressing down into the floor. Now we're just gonna bring our left hand to the top of that left thigh as we extend our right leg out. See if we can maybe hover it over the floor. If not, you can always rest the heel on the floor, but gently put a little pressure into that left thigh, that left leg. And you might start to feel some engagement through that core as well as you do so. And then we're gonna switch those legs. So right hand comes to the top of the right thigh as we slowly extend through that left leg. And then slowly drawing it back up and switching those legs. Starting to create a little bit of heat from inside the body, from that core. Again, try to keep that lower back connected to the mat. And a light pressure from the hand into the top of that leg, top of the thigh. Let's try a few more times each side. And then again here, after you even out both sides, go ahead and draw those feet back in, and you can lower those feet to the floor. Again, just allowing that lower back to release here. You're welcome to move those hips side to side a few more times if you'd like. Okay, and then as those knees and the hips come back to center, let's lower our hands to the floor. Walking those heels in a little bit closer to the hips. And then on a breath in, maybe start to ground down into those heels as we lift the hips up towards the ceiling into a gentle bridge. And then on the breath out, lowering those hips back down. And just a few times like that as you breathe in, grounding down into the heels, maybe even into the back of the shoulders. And then as you exhale, very slowly making your way back down until you just gently feel that connection, that brief connection with the hips and the floor, and then inhale as we lift them back up. Now we're going to continue to move those hips up and down. And if you'd like, you can add those arms. Maybe as you breathe in and lift the hips, we lift those arms all the way up overhead. And then on the breath out, bringing the hands, the palms back to the floor as the hips lower down. Inhaling as we lift. And exhaling, lowering back down. Just continue to move with your breath. As you lift the hips, think about drawing those heels in closer towards those shoulders underneath the body, even though they're not really moving. As you create that an internal movement and engagement as drawing those heels down and in, it helps to engage the hamstrings, the glutes, and that lower back where that psoas is connected all equally. So not one is taking over more than the other. Let's try 3 more breaths here. You can continue to move, or you can stay and hold with the hips lifted. And just one more full breath. And as you exhale, go ahead and lower all the way down. And let's draw those knees in towards the chest. Feel free to wrap the arms around the legs. We'll just gently rock the knees side to side. Okay, as those knees come back to center, feel free to bring hands to the back of those legs, and we're just going to rock and roll all the way up to a seat. Feel free to rock forward and back a few times if you want. Have a little fun there. Otherwise, let's bring those feet flat to the floor, about hip width apart once again, and hands can come to the top of those knees. Let's move through a few seated cat and cows here as we inhale, lifting nice and tall, big shoulder roll down and back. Maybe that gaze starts to turn upwards. And then on the exhale, we can round forward through the shoulders as we draw back through the belly and through that lower back. Inhaling as we lift forward and up through the heart. And exhaling as we round it out. And as we continue to move forward and back, see if you can even take that movement deeper into the pelvis. So you inhale, the pelvis tilts forward. And as we exhale, we tuck it in. Tuck in the tailbone, tucking in through those hips. 3 full breaths here. And making your way back to center, back to that neutral spine when you're ready. And exhaling it all the way out. All right, let's make our way up to those feet. Just finding your space here as you come to standing. Feel free to walk it out a little bit or just move around through the feet, the toes, and the ankles. Beginning to find your space in your mountain. As always, little space in between those feet or all the way together wherever you feel more stable. Soft bend in those knees as we start to ground down into those feet and lift tall through the crown of the head. Finding some engagement through those thighs as we lift up through the knees, that pelvic floor, the lower belly, drawing it in and upwards. And then exhale, just softening through the tops of those shoulders. Let's take a nice full breath in, lifting those arms all the way up. And exhaling, hands down to our heart. And inhaling, let's lift those arms. On our exhale, let's find a little twist, turning to one side, opening those arms out in both directions. Keeping that spine nice and healthy. Inhaling as we lift back up. Exhaling, let's turn to the other side. And we'll inhale, lifting all the way back up. On the breath out, let's reach those hands back behind us as we lean forward, hinging at the hips, and find that forward fold. Inhaling, let's lift halfway, finding a nice long spine as the crown of the head reaches forward. And exhaling, forward fold. Feel free to drop the chin towards the chest. Take a few breaths here, moving that head side to side. Maybe you sway the hips side to side. Just kind of listening to how the body wants to move. And slowly coming back to center, let's bend those knees as much as we need to so the hands can come to the floor. And we'll step our right foot to the back. Lowering down to that right knee, feel free to untuck those toes. And that's inhale and rise. Lifting up through the torso, lifting up through those arms. Let's try to bring our wrists above our shoulders and our shoulders above those hips. So slightly coming back a little bit. We're not sinking forward quite yet. Just stacking all the joints. Lifting nice and tall. Again, it starts from the pelvic floor and goes all the way up to those fingertips. Staying strong through that core. I'm a little wobbly today. It's funny how a cold or something can throw off your balance a little bit. All right. Let's go ahead and bring those hands down to our heart center, and let's bring our right hand to the back of the right hip. Left hand can rest on the thigh or the side of the hip. Nice full breath in. We're going to lift up through the crown of the head and gently, with that right hand, just gently try to press that right hip forward a little bit more. Beginning to open through the front of that psoas, the front of the hip flexor on that right side. And then we're going to take a few breaths as we move. So on our inhale, let's lift those arms all the way up. On the exhale, let's bring those hands back behind us, hands to that lower back. especially that right hand, as we gently press forward into those hips, but also start to lean forward. And then go ahead and inhale, sweeping those arms up as those shoulders come back above the hips. And then exhaling as we lean forward. Find that connection with the right hand and the back of that right hip. Inhaling as we lift back up, just one more time like that. Exhaling as we come forward, shifting that weight forward into those hips as they drop down towards the ground. And then go ahead and inhale those arms all the way back up, exhaling hands to the floor. We're gonna lift that back knee and drop the back heel to the floor as we turn the foot out to the side. And then let's inhale and reach all the way up to a warrior one. Bending into that front knee as we exhale, hands to our heart. Try to draw those hips forward, the shoulders facing forward, the gaze facing forward. And then inhale, lifting those arms. Exhaling, hands through our heart as we bend a little deeper into that front knee. Inhale, maybe straighten the front knee a little bit as we lift tall. Exhaling, bend. And again, just try to keep awareness on that right hip flexor, the front of the right hip. Notice how this might feel a little different than when we were in the lunge. One more time like that. As you inhale, really try to excuse me, press into the back foot. And exhale, continue to press into that pinky toe edge of that back foot. And then next breath in, let's open out to the side. Finding that warrior two. Front knee still facing forward, but we're turning our pelvis, our hips, and our shoulders facing the long side of our space or our mat. And then go ahead and inhale, straightening both legs, reaching forward through the left fingertips. Exhaling as we lower that left hand down towards the floor. And the right hand begins to lift up towards the sky. Stacking those shoulders. Now this top hand, feel free to leave it right where it is. You can always step that back foot in closer if needed. Or maybe you start to move that top arm around in a very slow circle. Again, trying to keep your awareness on that right hip. Maybe as you move that right arm around, forward or back, you might feel a little different areas through that hip as you move that arm around, but try to keep those shoulders and the gaze facing the side of the room the whole time. Drawing that right hip back behind you. Maybe one more circle with that arm. And as the arm comes up, go ahead and engage through that torso to help lift. And let's just reverse that triangle as we lift left arm up and the right hand lowers down. And then very slowly we'll cartwheel those hands all the way to the floor, lowering down to that back knee. And one more time, we're going to lift into our kneeling lunge. Nice and tall. And then exhaling as we lower our hands through our heart center. Let's turn to our left side. Finding a little twisting lunge here. Now you're welcome to keep elbows lifted, or you can bring elbow to the outside of the knee. 3 full breaths. Trying to soften through those hips. Feeling the floor underneath the left heel, the left foot as we ground down. Reaching the crown of the head forward and up as that left hip draws back. As you're ready, you can slowly unwind. Both hands find the floor. Lifting that back knee, go ahead and step front foot to the back. Feel free to lift it all the way up and shake it out a little bit. Then lowering both feet to the floor. Finding that downward dog, take a moment or two here to walk out those heels. To lift those hips up high as you ground down into those hands. Try to press the mat forward with those hands. And then next breath in, let's come forward to our plank. Feel free to lower to those knees or stay on those toes. Exhaling, elbows bend. And inhaling, lifting the heart, the shoulders into your cobra or your upward dog. Shoulders are drawing back as the heart reaches forward. Exhaling as we make our way back to that downward dog. Turning that gaze forward in between your hands, feel free to step, or you can bend both knees and hop, landing lightly into your forward fold. Inhaling, we'll lift halfway. Exhaling, forward fold. Nice deep bend in those knees as we ground down into those big toes, slowly rising. And exhaling, hands to your heart. Nice full breath in. And long breath out. Inhaling as we lift, rooting down into those feet as we lift through the arms. Exhaling, let's twist to one side. Inhaling, arms lift back up. Exhaling as we twist to the other side. Inhaling as we lift, and exhale, swan dive down, forward fold. Inhaling halfway. And exhaling, fold. Let's step our left foot to the back. Lowering down to that left knee, and we'll inhale, grounding down into that right heel as we rise up to a kneeling lunge on the opposite side here. And then exhaling, lowering hands to our heart. Again, try to bring shoulders above hips and hips above that back knee. Feel free to bring your left hand to the back of that left hip. Right hand can just rest on the thigh. And just for a moment or two here, gently pressing that left hand into the back of that hip. Even though we're not moving through the hips, just finding that gentle connection, that awareness through the hand and that lower back. And you are welcome to stay and just hold right here. Or if you'd like to move with that breath, you can inhale, those arms lift. And then exhaling, both hands come to the lower back as we gently press them forward, sinking them down towards the floor. And then inhale as we press into the front heel, lifting the hips above the knee. Exhaling, hands to that lower back as those hips come forward. Moving nice and slow and intentional. Just once more like that. Inhaling as we lift. And exhaling as those hips sink down and forward. All right, go ahead and lower those hands all the way to the floor. Let's tuck the back toes so we lift the knee. We're gonna step that back foot in a little bit as we turn the heel, or turn the foot out to the side, and the heel drops down. And then let's inhale and rise to our warrior one. Nice and tall, finding that stability through those legs, through those feet as you sink down into those hips. Beginning to bend into that front knee. Feel free to adjust the distance between your feet as needed. We're really trying to focus on lifting that thigh away from the front leg, pressing into the pinky toe edge of that foot as those hips reach forward. And then let's breathe and move. Inhaling as we lift, straightening that front leg. Exhaling, bending that front knee as the hand comes to our heart. Inhaling as we lift. Exhaling, bend. Keeping that focus on that left hip as you lift and lower. And one more time here. Nice and tall with that breath in. And exhaling it all the way out as we bend. Let's keep that front knee bent as we turn our shoulders and our hips to the side of our mat. You can adjust that back foot as needed. Opening those arms out to the sides. Feel free to adjust here. And then let's straighten that front leg. Inhale, reaching forward through those right fingertips. Exhaling as we find that triangle with the right hand reaching down along the inside of the leg, the left arm reaching up. Now you definitely do not need to be touching the floor here. You can always be up here or anywhere along the way. Just trying to keep those shoulders stacked, the top shoulder drawing back, as well as those hips. Think about that top hip reaching back behind you. Then as you find your space here, you're welcome to stay and hold. Or again, you can slowly move that top arm. And just try to notice if that changes what you might feel through the hip or even the lower back, maybe somewhere else. I love triangle because it not only opens through the hip, the lower back, but also maybe through the inner thigh on that front leg. more circle around. And then as that arm lifts back up, engaging that core to lift the whole torso, and just reversing our triangles, that right arm lifts. Slowly cartwheel in both hands all the way back down to the floor. Go ahead and lower to that back knee one more time as we inhale and lift up to our kneeling lunge. And then exhaling, hands lower through our heart center as we turn to the right. Finding that twisting lunge. Trying to soften through those hips as they sink down towards the floor. Continuing to press into those palms as we keep those shoulders open, the chest open. About 2 more full breaths here. And on your inhale, untwisting, go ahead and lower both hands to the floor. Lifting that back knee, and we'll step this front foot back and all the way up. Feel free to move it around a little bit. And then lowering that foot down when you're ready, back to your downward dog. All right, we're going to turn that gaze forward in between those hands. We're going to step our feet to the front, but let's try to keep those hips low and have a seat on the mat. All right, so it's a lot more we can do for that psoas, but due to sake of time, we're actually going to lower down to our back, and we're going to finish with a little psoas release exercise. I don't know the fancy name for it. I just call it a leg shake. But as you make your way down, let me just explain a little bit. And just like with everything though, it's always optional. As we move through it, if it's not feeling so great or uncomfortable, you can always come out of it altogether. The concept behind this psoas release exercise here is to really engage and fire up that psoas, so much so that when you release, it just really lets it all go, all that tension that we hold on to. And it's going to be different every time you do this. Some days your legs might shake, some days they might not shake at all. So don't feel like you're doing it wrong if it's not shaking or if it's like shaking a lot. So essentially, what's going to happen, what we're going to do is we're going to start by bringing the soles of our feet together, resting on the floor. Now try to find that connection between the outer edges of your feet and the floor as those knees open out to the sides. So we're just starting like in a butterfly stretch here with those legs. And the arms can be on the floor, maybe along your sides or maybe on the lower belly. Again, it's totally up to you. We're going to begin by just pressing into the soles of those feet and see if you can just lift those hips just an inch or two off the floor. Starting to engage and work that psoas muscle from the lower back around to those inner thighs. Just a tiny little lift here. With those hips, the knees are just pointed out to the sides. And as we move through this, really try to focus, keep that connection between the soles of your feet and the outer edges of the feet and the floor. And then go ahead and lower those hips back down. Now we're going to keep the hips, we're going to keep that lower back connected to the floor here. And we're just going to lift the knees about 2 inches higher than where they are right now. So again, it's just a small little lift, and we're going to hold there. And throughout these next couple minutes is just going to consist of a little lift of those knees and hold. And you might find each little spot along the way, it might cause the legs or the pelvis or the hips to shake a little bit. But it might not as well too. So again, it's going to be different for each one of us and each time that we try this. So just holding those legs where they are, continuing to press into the soles of the feet, and trying to keep that lower back connected to the floor. And breathe. Always breathing. And this is just an abbreviated version of the full exercise here, but it's still beneficial. Okay, when you feel ready, we're going to lift those knees about 2 inches higher than where they just were, and then hold there. You can try to draw that belly button down closer to the spine, the edges of the feet connected to the floor. Those legs might start to wobble, they might start to shake a little bit. I'm trying to stay with that breath. Just slowly breathing in and slowly breathing out. You can breathe through your nose or your mouth, whatever's more comfortable. Maybe try to soften through the gaze as we continue to hold those legs where they're at. Again, just allow them to do what they want to do, though. If they want to shake, allow them to shake. Okay, when you feel ready, we're going to lift those knees about 2 inches higher and just see what happens there. They might shake a little more, they might stop shaking. Sometimes the shaking goes in waves. And giving yourself permission to straighten out those legs at any time if this has the potential to bring up different emotions or things that we're holding on to in that psoas muscle. So if it becomes overwhelming at any point, feel free to come out of it and just straighten out those legs and rest. A few more breaths here. Trying to keep those feet connected. Feeling the mat underneath that spine, underneath those hips. All right, then when you're ready, we're going to do one more lift. Lifting those knees just a little bit higher. Continuing to breathe. You got it. Let's take 3 more full breaths here. And maybe one more full breath in. And then on that breath out, go ahead and just drop those knees down towards the floor, and then slowly we'll straighten them all the way out in front. Maybe we turn those palms facing up. You might close those eyes. Just allowing the body to rest. Those legs, the hips, the psoas, the back. Allowing it all to just let go. Now giving yourself as much time as you have today to just lay here in your Shavasana, allowing yourself to just feel the effects of all those movements, the stretches, the releases that you just did. And I'm just going to leave you here, let you come out of it at your own time, your own pace. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you next time. Namaste.